here today, but luckily was able to send us a video to present her action. This is Susana Carrillo. She's counselor in innovation and urban digitalization and spokesperson for the city of Malaga in Spain. Malaga is one of Finova's partners, and Susana will present what action
to make a smart decision to improve the quality of life for our citizens, helping us to achieve a more flexible, more livable, safer, and more welcoming city. The innovative, interactive, and inclusive city, or either our 2050 urban agenda, our climate plan, and more recently, the incorporation of the Sustainable Development Goals into the city plan, Malaga has a sustainable mobility plan that is considered as a strategy tool for all urban planning of Malaga. The plan includes a set of actions that aim to implement more sustainable form of mobility, walking, cycling, and public transport within our city. In other words, modes of transport that make a better quality of life for citizens. Also, we have dedicated 4 years to preparing project in consortium among companies, the university and the city council. We have obtained more than 200 million euros from Europe funds for innovation projects to be deployed in the city to turn Malaga into a real living lab focused on sustainability. Many of these projects have sought to test and introduce innovative technologies related to sustainable mobility in our city. In 2009, the city began developing and testing the first initiative in Europe that worked with all the smart city and smart grid technologies, including electromobility in a real living lab, a real environment with real problems, real customers, the citizens. As a result of the success of this first project, other pilot projects were quick to follow. For example, Green Emotion Project to develop and to demonstrate a commonly accepted framework to enable mass deployment of electromobility in Europe. To move to project further knowledge of innovative integrated urban transport systems, providing network for cities to assimilate best practice, evaluate impacts, and disseminate results. Paloma and Victoria projects, among the first prototype in the world of fast charging for electric buses through ground-based and inductive wireless solution. 10 to All project in 2010 with 61 million euro budget in collaboration with the government of Japan, Mitsubishi and Hitachi, creating a real space for citizens to test the use of 200 electric vehicles and different charging and technology solutions. Go Some project that target the challenge of capitalization and make streaming of project results and solutions for sustainable mobility. Malaga Automos, thanks to this project, we have the first autonomous bus operating in our city. And by now, our last innovative project regarding mobility, Meister project, that aims to change the paradigm in the electromobility market by providing interoperable platforms and service for easy, convenient, and barrier-free access to charging, billing, and smart grid services. To conclude, I would like to add that Malaga is a real lighthouse of knowledge open to the world. Our trade fair and congress center is one of the most active organizers in Southern Europe, specializing in professional events related to the fields of innovation and digital transformation. Examples of these are Transfiere Congress, Green Cities, and of course, Smoothing, the reference space for companies, professionals, organizations, and public administration in the intelligent autonomous vehicle sector. We will continue to work for the Malaga ecosystem, letting our children develop personally and professionally in this wonderful city, to which you are, of course, all invited. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Susana, for this great video. So I think in this video, what we heard is really a number of solutions that the city has been using to enable the transition. First of all, we heard about the importance of mobility planning. Malaga shared that they have a sustainable urban mobility plan, which help them identify strategies to increase the modal share of walking, cycling, and public transport. Second, we heard about the importance of having these partnerships with different stakeholders. So for instance, they have been working with universities and with the private sector, which help them really foster innovation in the city. And then lastly, I heard this message about how the city has been using the city as a living lab to get direct feedback from the citizens, which is also central if you want to enable the transition to happen. So now I would like to turn to Jonathan and Jason. We have Jason online. I don't know if we can see him yet. So you're both members of Climate Rally, a youth initiative that is raising awareness on climate change ahead of climate COPs. So we have seen all over the planet youth engaging very actively on this key issue of our time. And we see the central role that you're playing. So last month, you went on a bicycle tour, and I understood that you have been organizing events throughout Germany, Italy, Austria maybe, and you wanted to do so to increase awareness and develop ideas for a net zero transport. So could you tell us more about what you did and how your activism activities are complementing these other initiatives that we just heard about from Malaga?
Yes, welcome. Thank you. The Climate Rally was an event organized by the local conference of youth Germany and Austria, which are like two organizations which are normally planning a conference each year. And we decided to organize a bike trip, which started in Munich with a big event. Also, the council from Italy and from Austria joined, and some mayors in the different countries. It was a bike trip from the 16th to the 26th of September. And we went from Munich to Innsbruck and from Innsbruck to Milan. And it was like a huge opportunity to see the differences between the countries and to talk to people in the politics and to connect them.
Can you tell me if there was any surprises on the road?
The roads were very different. Like we sometimes the bikeways were very good, but sometimes we were just next to a road and didn't feel very safe. So there's I think a lot to do for make the bike as the transportation more attractive in every part of in every cities. Yeah.
And could you share a bit more about concrete examples of how you do activism in such a trip, for instance? Were you organizing events in each cities that you were crossing? Who were you gathering?
Yeah, we had in each city there was a big event, and people from the politics could talk to each other, which maybe have heard of each other before but never talked, and also the youth could ask questions and get in contact with them.
And can you share maybe what's the main message that you've heard from these youth? Was it different depending on the countries, or were you surprised by anything? Was there anything you did not expect to hear?
Well, not really. Sorry. I think the easiest way to make transportation safer and also more sustainable is via tempo limits, because it's also a lot nicer to go by bike when the cars next to you are not passing with 80 miles per hour or per kilometer. And it's also a lot safer for the cars as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so mostly the same challenges across Europe?
Mostly the same, yeah.
Okay, and was it, were you managing to actually engage also decision makers in these events that you were organizing?
Yes, like I said, the mayors of each countries were there, and in Munich also the councils from Italy and from Austria joined. and through the bike trip, we collected all the information from the politicians and gave them to the next countries and talked with them, like, they're doing it that way and it works, why don't you do it this way? And I think was a very great chance to.
Were they surprised to see such commitments from the youth? Did you have the impression they were hearing you, or did you feel like your message was getting lost among so many priorities that they have?
I think most of them, like, they were already interested in doing more sustainable transport. So we often were the same opinion, and it was also good to see that it's not always confrontation, but we can agree on a lot of things.
Yeah. I think the challenge lies really in making the ideas concrete then. Sometimes the will is there, but the means are not that easy. Thank you very much for sharing these insights, and congrats on riding your bikes all the way to COP. So I really think, change is really led by a number of actors. We can see that in this global event that is taking place right now, and the commitment of youth throughout the world has been really impressive. We hear your voice, and it's great that you can be here today also to bring this message. So now I would like to turn to Sasank. You're also here to talk about a sector that is not always represented and given a voice on the global stage, despite representing such a large part of transport in the global south. And that is the informal transport sector, or paratransit. So you're here today as the coordinator of Mobilize Your City, which is a partnership between the governments of France, Germany, and the European Union. And they're providing support to more than 60 cities in 32 countries for sustainable mobility planning, policy development, increasing investment for sustainable transport in the global south. So can you tell us more about why Mobilize Your City is focusing on paratransit when you think about decarbonizing the transport sector, and maybe what are specific challenges to this sector?
Thank you, Eleanor. Thank you for the question, and also for helping create this space where we can have this conversation together. So we're at the climate COP. You talked about Germany and Austria. We heard about Spain. We work in the global south. I mean, climate is an issue that doesn't recognize and see national borders. So I think this is really a great opportunity to come together to work on these issues that really transcend the national boundaries. And we wanted to specifically highlight one issue that we think we need to all kind of collaboratively work on, which is the issue of paratransit, or also known as informal transport. Informal transport, I guess, in sort of broadly defined, is transportation that works in the informal, semi-formal working space, and partially regulated, partially misregulated space as well. So this includes things like auto rickshaws, tuk-tuks, boda-bodas, so individual motorcycle taxis, and minibuses that transport a large number of people. I mean, the modal share for paratransit can be up to 50% in places like Mexico City, Dar es Salaam, and generally across the world. So you asked about the challenges. There's a lot of challenges, and maybe I'll highlight 3 of them. So one of the challenges is really identifying, counting, and understanding the scale of the issue. So Malaga talked about Sustainable Urban Mobility Plan that they use as the vehicle to identify investments for public transportation, walking and cycling, and their other investments. One of the invisible actors that is often not considered is paratransit. So I mentioned a little bit the scale of the importance. One of the challenges is making sure that they're counted. Like, how do we count the service providers and the people who are dependent on these paratransit service providers? A second issue is financing. So we're at COP. So abolishing internal combustion engine is high on the agenda for the UK presidency. We're talking about hundreds and millions of incredibly poor workers that are operating vehicles that are 25 to 15 years old, that are incredibly polluting. So in Mexico City, an older study, almost 15 years old, says that about 1.5% of the vehicles in Mexico City emit 10% of the carbon emissions from Mexico City. So you see this total disproportionate level of the age of the vehicles and the emissions. And the people who are operating these don't have the financing to be able to upgrade their vehicles as we need to. So we can talk about abolishing ICE, but we have to also enable the financing to happen. And then maybe one of the third challenges is creating the resources, the toolkits, the facilities like Finoba that help these paratransit operators, the really fragmented group of operators, in building their capacities, accessing finance, and being able to be integrated into this entire system. So really, I think what we're talking about when we're talking about cycling and paratransit is the entire mobility ecosystem. And rather than working on individual components, I think this kind of event shows that we have to work on it holistically.
Can you maybe, just to go a little bit further on this question of decarbonizing the transport, do you hear that as being a concern also from the city you work with?
Yes and no. I think, so climate change has become incredibly evident. So in the Asia-Pacific region where we work, the majority of urban population lives in coastal areas. They're inundated with floods, with typhoons. They're experiencing and living the impacts of climate change. But there's a lot of different priorities for urban leaders and urban managers. And so they are sort of, let's say, victims of the impacts of climate change, but are also kind of struggling to see how they can spread the limited resources. Is it COVID recovery, or is it low carbon transportation? I mean, those are really difficult decisions to make. So I think, yes, on one hand, they see the importance, and then the other hand, I think they're also looking for, as the climate conference is meant to do, additional resources to be able to address this challenge.
Thank you very much for this clear presentation. We'll get back to you later, but I hear already that there's a lot to be done on this sector. And even though there doesn't seem to be an easy solution, I hear the urgency to take action if we want to decarbonize transport in the Global South. So thank you for this first round of insights. We have heard how multi-stakeholder action and giving voice to those that are less represented is really fundamental if we want to work on transport decarbonization. And so now we're going to continue with the rest of our invitees today. So we have here with us Javier Galles, who is Chief Financial Officer at TBox. And that's a company that offers urban logistics services, especially focused on the last mile delivery. And you're also a partner of Finoba. Yeah. So when we talk about decarbonizing urban transport, urban freight is actually a key sector because I just found out that it represents today 40% of urban transport emissions, and it's also responsible for a large source of congestion in cities because it represents as well 40% of the road space that is occupied by freight vehicles. So Javier, I understand that you're passionate about urban logistics. You started a career in this sector, and then you decided to join a company that is willing to transform this sector and to make it more responsible and to work on these issues that I just mentioned. So can you tell us more about your company? And in particular, could you share your experience with accessing funding in this sector that might maybe need an extra support to become more sustainable?
Yeah. Morning. Well, my name is Javier Galles. I am the CFO, as you said. I am one of the founders of TBox. And we like to say that TBox is the most logistical solution. Okay? TBox is an innovative company that offers advanced logistics services. Okay? And as you said, our core business focuses on the efficient management of the supply chain with special attention in the last mile. So our logistical model solves and answers the challenge sustainable and intelligent mobility set by the European Commission in December of 2020. More specifically, with respect to a reduction in greenhouse emission, a reduction in accident rate, and in urban congestion, because we start a test or a project in Valencia a few weeks ago, a smart delivery project, in collaboration with Finoba, with Las Naves from the City Council of Valencia, and financed by EUClimateAction. So my experience as I recommend to every startup that wants to access to these funds, to have a partner with the expertise. Okay, we are logistical people. We don't know about this issue, so we invest in Finoba to find this way, or to find funds. So smart delivery consists in the launch of two types of hubs. The supply chain hub are multi-product and multi-sector interchanges situated on the outskirts of the city, where factories and distributors meet. So there, the loss will be categorized either to the capillary delivery or to the last mile delivery. Through the second hub, the fulfillment urban hubs. Okay, the fulfillment urban hubs will be located in the urban centers, which allow them to service or a quick service both to the B2B or B2C customers. And there we will have an automatic warehouses and 100% electric vehicles too. And with this model, we are making we are comparing one road of full propelled vehicle with one road with this model with smart delivery. And
sorry to interrupt, but do I understand correctly that basically in order to decarbonize this sector, you're trying not only to work on the vehicles themselves, but also on optimizing the whole chain of the logistics?
But we divide the supply chain, and with this movement, we can save 6 tons of carbon dioxide in one year with one road only.
Wow.
So it's amazing, amazing results.
Really impressive. Why hasn't it been done so far?
No, we are taking this, or we are making the test in Valencia, but also we talk with other cities in Spain too. And this model or this project could be live in any city in the world. So it depends of the city councils.
Were you in close contact with the city as well when you developed the project, or through Finoba maybe?
Say again?
Were you in close contact with the city when you developed the project? Did you discuss with the municipality also?
Absolutely. Yeah, we talked with the City Council of Valencia or Las Naves, a foundation inside the City Council. This model, we need a collaboration for the cities also.
Yeah.
For example, Malaga is a city that do it very, very well.
Well, thank you very much, and congratulations on starting and what have you done already. So I heard really this important point that you raised about having the right partners to do so. So the city, but I understand also Finoba has been a key partner for you to be able to really launch the company. And I hear how your company is also a great example of how the private sector can be a partner for city on their way to decarbonization. So this is also really interesting. So best of luck in the future development. So now coming back to Climate Rally, I think we have Jason online. Is that correct? Jason, can you hear me? Okay. So thank you very much for joining us. Where are you actually at the moment?
So I'm in Germany right now, yeah.
Okay. I don't hear you that well. Maybe we can get the sound a little bit louder. I would like to ask you a few questions from your perspective as an organization of young activists that are encouraging active mobility as a simple and effective way to decarbonize urban transport. So we heard from TBox also that I read on your website that you guys are working on different challenges, and one of them is really road safety, because that's one of the difficulties when you're cycling throughout the city. And we know it here as well. We're in Brussels today. It's definitely a challenge. When I get on my bike, I know I have to be careful. I have a young daughter behind me, and I hear a lot of parents being very concerned with that. So can you tell us, what do you think is lacking today in cities to allow cycling to be safer and to encourage people to ride more?
Yeah, so first of all, we have to define like the main problem we experience on our tour. So our current mobile infrastructure, especially in cities, wasn't designed for transporting many people efficiently from one point to the another. So it's mostly designed for cars and motorized vehicles. So nothing new here. What we need is like a radical change in using mobility, and that on a global scale. So yeah, that's the kind of challenge we have to get it emission-free. So we have experience we need for more safe mobility. Like Jonathan also mentioned, like a speed limit of 30 kilometers per hour in cities, and also on motorways. And we have to like share the space we have, the limited space in cities, equally to all.
Any smart examples that you would like to share today?
Yeah, we had like the experience of like a town without vehicles, like only for pedestrians and cyclists, and that was very impressive. Like in Innsbruck, there are streets only free for cyclists, and that's kind of great. And yeah, also trams and yeah, but no cars allowed in special areas. So that was very interesting, I guess, to experience. Like you have all the place what a car is usually using, just for many people on the bike or yeah, walking people.
Mm-hmm. And we all know that cycling is great for short distances. It's very often faster than any other means of transport in the city. But what about commuters that need to travel longer distances? Are there solutions today? And maybe have you experienced or used any of them to travel longer distances when you're with your bike?
There are like two solutions we experience. Like in Germany, we have like high-speed bike lanes. Yeah, very, very interesting concept, but it's like for long distances on like a motorway, you can ride your bike like 20 kilometers to the next town. So that's like a big distance. And of course you need to have like low threshold options to take your bike or what else you're using in micromobility in trains or another in buses. So that's something we have not experienced. We rode back by train from Milan to Munich, or where we all live, and it was very hard to get enough space for bicycles for a huge group of 20 people back. So trains have limited capacity there.
Okay, that's very interesting. Thank you. And do you think maybe those solutions could be applied to non-European countries? Have you exchanged with any partners from the organization that you work with in non-European countries?
So yeah, we were talking to like in the COY, like the Conference of Youth, to many of other. We have 3 delegates from our team who are talking to many of them, but we have no conclusion on that, how we can apply our solution on other countries yet. But we are trying to implement on countries who haven't like an infrastructure like we have in Europe. But we can go there, I guess.
Great, thank you very much for your answers and for the practical suggestions that I hope inspire the decision makers that are listening to us today. So now I'm coming back to you, Sasank, and to the topic of paratransit. So we heard from what you said, the urgency there is to take action on this topic and all of the many challenges, whether in terms of road safety, air pollution, inequality of access, or even the conditions of work of the workers that are in this sector. But can you tell us more about the solutions that exist today? Are there any? And do we see any possibilities to reform this sector?
Thank you. This conversation has been really interesting because some of the solutions maybe that I hadn't immediately thought about are also coming to my mind. So just as a reminder, some of the 3 challenges that I kind of mentioned at the beginning of the conversation was maybe the lack of information, sufficient understanding of the context on the ground in order to be able to propose the right solutions.
Sorry?
The second was the integration, the capacities to be able to integrate the solutions, and the third was the access to financing. And when you mentioned 40% of carbon emissions come from the logistics sector, for example. I mean, this is a piece of information that's really necessary when we're planning for sustainable cities, which we would try to do in the diagnostic phase of a sustainable urban mobility plan. And so I think this is a really important piece of the puzzle, is to understand your status quo, see how the paratransit, informal sector, logistics, all of these different actors contribute to the emissions in cities at the moment. And we certainly need more support and more resources to be able to do better diagnostics. So with the German Ministry of Environment, we received money, that the Mobilizer City partner, GIZ, received money to do a national program for the paratransit sector, which is dominated by these jeepneys. And they contribute almost 16% of transport emissions in the Philippines. And so you can see by understanding the problem, you can then start thinking about the solutions. So the next step is really like, when you understand the problem, what can you do to integrate? And the integration was kind of, Jason mentioned not being able to take bicycles onto the public transportation system. And so there's a real issue of integration that requires thinking about not just one piece of the puzzle, but the entire transport system. And we really think that sustainable urban mobility plans are a good way to sort of take the bird's eye view, look at all of the modes of transportation, and then maybe also even extend to logistics and land use in the near future to have kind of this comprehensive view. But to be able to do that, we need better capacities. We need to help build capacities. The third thing is the resources. I liked how TBox said that, they're a startup, they're a logistics expert, and to be able to access the financing, you had to go get expertise to help you access the financing. And that's, similar if you're financing public transportation system, bicycle lanes, or supporting the paratransit. But I think for us, one of the questions is, who are these experts? Who are the experts that can help the jeepney sector in the Philippines professionalize and access funding to be able to upgrade their vehicles? And who supports in establishing, setting up those experts? So I think one of the solutions really in the third component of finance is what maybe exists here, is we have to take that same experience and reach out to the rest of the world, because as I said, we're at the climate COP, and climate knows no boundaries. So just fixing solutions in Innsbruck is probably not going to be enough for the challenges that we're facing ahead.
Thank you. So I understand this need for a framework for the city to work with and really not miss a piece of the puzzle. But do you have examples of concrete measures that they can take on this specific topic of paratransit? Are there any action that a city can take to reform the sector?
Yes. I think there's a lot of actions that they can take. So we actually will be releasing a publication on the 29th of this month with 50 actions that a city can take, and everybody should join our event. But some examples in preparing these transitions would be mapping this diagnostics to see what routes are being served by informal transport, how old are their vehicles, what are the working conditions of the drivers and the riders, what do the users want to get out of the city. And then all the way through implementation. And one of the actions that we are recommending is also to set up something like an incubation to support these businesses, because at the end of the day, they are businesses, no? They might not seem like businesses, but they're people who own vehicles, have to feed their families, and have some sort of business plan in the back of their head. And so we are thinking about a range of options, from really preparing to supporting the implementation, from mapping to business incubation.
Great. So we're taking note of the 29th of November. And I understood you're going to launch a publication. So I read on your website the Paratransit Toolkit.
Yes, thank you.
All right. So we'll stay tuned for that. So thank you very much. And I heard from everyone here how really there's this importance of looking at the entire picture and ensuring good policy coordination among the different sectors, but also setting the right level of ambition. So you said sometimes you've actually seen or met with decision makers and they have the ambition, but then the next challenge is then access to funding, and usually making it concrete. Funding can be one of the obstacles on the way for a lot of cities and other actors that are taking action, like your company is a great example of. So we see that all of these elements are necessary to successfully decarbonize transport in cities. So I would add to that the diversity that is being represented here really shows the number of actors that need to work together, which makes it really complex for cities also to know how to address all of these different actors. And so a partnership like Mobilize Your City, for instance, is trying to make sense of this complexity and support cities. And I understand, Finoba, you're also working with all of these different spectrum of actors. And so this is really a great example of what we need to do if we are to succeed in this fight against climate change. So now, before moving to the conclusion of our event with the identification of policy recommendation that I mentioned at the beginning, so I would like to introduce Juanma Revuelta. You are the CEO of Finoba. That is a European foundation supporting the financing of innovation in companies, regions, and municipalities. So Finoba has partnered with Startup Europe Award to acknowledge the effort of startups working for sustainable mobility. So Juanma, I would like to give you the floor. Maybe you can introduce a little bit more who you are, how you worked, and present this award.
Okay, thank you very much for being invited in this closing day of the COP26. It's an honor for us. Finoba Foundation has his headquarters here in Brussels, but we are in Spain, in Panama, in Chile, and we are more than open to work worldwide. What we try is to help to doing the things. That means financing. And allow me to explain that today we are in timing of the biggest economic recovery plan in all over the world. We are talking of 12 times what was the so-called Marshall's Plan in terms of GDP. That means a lot of funding. It's true that we are working with the DG Connect, with Startup Europe, and one of our startups accelerated is TBox, and we are very proud of that. But coming to the figures and the facts, in Europe, we calculate there are around 50,000 people that die every year because of the contamination in the cities of there. We are talking of dioxide of nitrogen and other air pollutants. 50,000 people. 70% of the pollution comes from the urban transport of humans, buses, etc., and also for the delivery, for logistics. Then we have to understand that the Green Deal from the European Commission, part of that and the new Bauhaus means how to afford the challenge of the electrical cars. But coming back in other countries, we have other programs like EUClimateAction and all what is triangular cooperation. We will be in contact that allows to bring low-cost technologies in all over the world. For example, the project EcoBus that allows to recollect the used oil from Horeca, hotels, restaurants, and catering, to produce biodiesel in the public fleet of buses of Valencia. And it has been copy-pasted in other countries. But allow me to finish with the Startup Europe Awards. We have launched the COP26 Special Edition Startup Europe Awards, and it's because of that we propose to TBox to come here because they have won European Ticket Accelerator. That means we will be helping them to obtain more funding, perhaps in the field of the life call that will end at the end of this month. We are talking of pilot projects of more than 1 million euros. But for that challenge and closing, we have to understand we have the technology, we have the needs, we have the talent from enterprises, universities, and now it's time for action. We have to do networking, consortium, exchange ideas, and submit proposals because we have the funding.
Thank you very much, and congratulations to TBox. So I mentioned at the beginning how we were here also today at COP26, and one of the objectives of this event is to identify recommendations for the policymakers. So I would like to get back to Climate Rally first. Following everything that you shared with us today, how can you use this particular platform that we're given here? You are the voice of the youth, and you can speak for those who cannot take part in the conversation. What would you like to tell today?
Yeah, I would like to tell that to reach the 1.5 degree goal, we have to reduce the cars in the cities and think of more sustainable concepts. And I mean, just like you said, concepts that include many ways of transportation. Like there could be one ticket to use car sharing and bicycle renting and the public transport, which would make it a lot easier to use the more sustainable ways to travel. Yeah, and cars, we talk a lot about electric cars, which is also good that we talk about it, but we should also think about cities, how they would be if there would be less cars. They would be much livable, much better to live, and yeah, also much more sustainable. We need to build better infrastructures for trains and public transportations.
Thank you very much. That's a key message that I think everyone agrees with here. So Sasank, you have the floor. What are recommendations you would like to share with policymakers that are taking the decisions right now to fight against climate change?
Thank you. So I think we have recommendations that I've sort of hinted at in the solutions. And the first recommendation is maybe to get out of the siloed thinking. So it's not about abolishing ICE, it's about the whole just abolishing ICE, but rather the whole comprehensive transport system. In cities, we need to look at everything from cycling to paratransit, from logistics to how we can get bicycles onto public transportation. And so maybe the first recommendation would be to encourage and continue to support the comprehensive integration, systemic things, so systems thinking of public transportation. The second is really to act now and to act with urgency. I mean, this is not plans that we need to make in the future, but we have to continue sort of translating very quickly from plans to financing to implementation. And that requires not just having the resources, but knowing that these resources, I mean, 12 times the Marshall Plan is a huge amount. It's great that these resources exist, but also enabling people to access them. No, I mean, and really so EUClimate Plus, I think, is a great example, and we need not just EUClimate Plus, but maybe 12 EUClimate Pluses, no? We have 12 times the Marshall Plan, so EUClimate Plus for Asia and for Africa and for other regions as well. And the third would also be really in the specific area of business incubation, to recognize and acknowledge that paratransit workers are small-scale businesses, and they need the same type of support as any other MSE, micro, small, and medium enterprises, and maybe more so than others, especially in this moment of the global climate crisis, because they're significant contributors to the issue.
Thank you very much. So I think now we can turn to our audience online. We have received a number of questions that we can share with our speakers today. So first we have a question here about the need to ensure that sustainable mobility options are accessible and inclusive to all, and with the example of disabled people. How are you planning to move towards this goal? Who would like to take up that first question? Yeah, one more?
Okay, I think we can inspire of what are doing in some cities, as for example, Valencia City or Alicante City. That means they have, in some cities, they have created a public aid for green taxis for disabled people that cover 80% of that cost. Also, I think it's quite interesting to see, because there are a lot of barriers, urban barriers, in most of the countries of Europe, they have removed thanks to structural funds. And I think we should share that with third countries because in Latin America, for example, is not so evident.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wants to complement the answer?
I can give an example in the Latin America Pacific region, Santo Domingo. The EU has supported a study and a project is being implemented by the French Development Bank that is looking at a large-scale public transportation system. And one of the components really has 500,000 allocated specifically to this question about enabling disabled access. I mean, I think it's exactly what you said is recognizing the kind of issues and making sure that we extend the support where we're working internationally anyway. And the Santo Domingo example by the French Development Bank, AFD, is a good example of that.
Thank you. We have the next question. What's your perspective about the future of climate finance for the initiatives we saw today? Innovation, electric mobility, active mobility, paratransit. About climate finance, a big topic.
I can
maybe, you want to start?
Yeah, I can kick off the conversation on the climate finance. So, I mean, when we talk about climate finance, I think there's sort of two ways of looking at it. One is the very narrow definition of climate finance. So the finance that's allocated in the COP, UNFCCC process, the Green Climate Fund, Adaptation Fund, funds like that. And I think increasingly the way that we're thinking about all finance being Paris compliant. And I think we have to use both of these types of climate finance in the appropriate way. I think that we have to ensure that all finance is at the minimum Paris compliant, and then use the UNFCCC finance in the best possible way to trigger and crowd in public and private financing infrastructure. So let me maybe just use an example of the paratransit sector. There's no way that poor marginal operators of paratransit vehicles will be able to upgrade their vehicles themselves. I mean, they're barely sort of scraping by at the moment. And so using the narrow definition of climate finance, I mean, those are the kinds of funds that could be used to subsidize the replacement of vehicles, because it's not just for their sake, it's for our sake, it's our planet. The broader definition of climate finance could be used for the more structural elements. So instead of using finance for roads, making sure those roads are complete roads that have cycle infrastructure and walking infrastructure as well.
If I may, I think also we should recycle the old vehicles. In France, they have launched a program that finances the transformation of all fuel cars into electrical cars with 12,000 euros for the transformation. In most of the countries, there are big administrative barriers to do that. For example, in Spain, we have a problem. If you pretend to transform your old vehicle in an electrical car, what at the end of the day is not so difficult. You have to put batteries, but it's a question to take away some parts of the motors. It's not possible because you have to pay all what is the industrial permissions that cost around 200,000 euros. Impossible. Then, in that funding, I think in the future we will see all these kind of scale revolving funds. You can use structural funds for that. That allows that in the future I see also what is the hydrogen and vehicles. And a lot of entities are working in the field of waste to fuel and waste to waste to energy. In waste to fuel, there are space to transform. In methanol now is doing that. If I may, in Palma de Mallorca, the company Emaya, they are using 12% of the consume of the fuel of the lorries for waste come from the biogas from the depuration water treatment plants. And just a figure. In Europe, there are 18,000 depuration water treatment plants where you can obtain gas and you can digest other waste from around, from the Oreca or as pig slurry, and you can bring that gas to the public fleet of buses or lorries. And about the funding, that's financed from Life Eco Digestion. You have the information, and we can scale that in other countries through EUClimateAction or with the triangle cooperation, or also into Europe with structural funds or with big next generation projects of more than 50 million euros in a region. It's there.
So maybe we have time to take one more question before the end of the event. How can we foster a sustained participation of underrepresented sectors such as youth and disabled people to implement low-carbon mobility solutions? Question about participation, you want to answer?
Yeah, maybe like we can try to connect each other through every kind of possibilities we have, like events or just a little talk with your friends or parents. It's like the simple things can start bigger things, I guess. And there are a lot of organizations where you can act for climate. Yeah, I think we should use them.
Thank you very much. I think we can end with these encouraging words. You're right, and I think this example of this panel and the diversity of the actors that we brought here today really shows how everyone needs to do their part if we want to succeed in fighting against climate change. So I would like to thank you all again for participating today and joining us on this event that demonstrated against the diversity of the actors engaged today and fighting to decarbonize transport in cities. So thank you as well for all those who listened to us online today. We hope this conversation inspired you to take action wherever you are, in whatever sector you're working in. Everyone needs to do their part, whether in the field of innovation, active mobility, paratransit, urban freight. So I hope everyone had some inspiration from the conversation we had today. Thank you very much. Have a very nice day.